fishing. People, when you're in the mood, let's go fishing. Well, it's just me and you. Head on down to the fishing hole. Grab your hat, get your pole. Let's go fishing when you're in the mood.
Canadian sport fishing.
Living in southern Ontario, Canada, I can choose from so many different places to fish. For example, I can fish the Great Lakes or some of the interior lakes that are in southern Ontario and northern Ontario. One of my favorite places to fish, though, is the Kawartha chain of lakes. There I can choose from 10 different lakes and fish for a multitude of fish species. Whether I want to fish in shallow water to target largemouth bass, or whether I want to fish deeper water for walleye, muskie, and smallmouth bass. It's an amazing series of lakes that has great fishing all season long. This is interesting, Mike. There's a fish down there. Have you done that much? Where you see a bass?
Sight fishing.
They're moving so slowly. Look, is he even going to jump? I don't know. Mike is using that wacky rig, and he's got that tiny hook on. I've got this thing. I said earlier, it looks like a meat hook. It's so big, that 6-aught. But you know what? Look. Even though it's a heavy hook, look, it went right through that maxillary that's there. Now, do you find when you get cold fronts like this that the smaller fish tend to hit more than the bigger ones?
Yeah, a little bit, but when you do get a good one, it's usually a really good one.
Which hook is bigger? I can't tell. That is a big hook. That's so cute, though. But you know what? You don't need as much pressure to get the hook into the fish, right?
No.
So I got to really heave it, you know, but when you get it in, you get it in. You know what? He's 13 and a half, hey? Yeah. Usually it's 12 inches, right?
You know, we could get rid of him, but we'll take him for a starter.
Some days you're praying for just one more, right?
That's
just
right.
to get just to get your limit, yeah? The Kawartha Lakes are part of the Trent-Severn waterways, and they're actually connected by a series of dams on the Trent River. The Trent River starts in Lake Ontario at Trenton, Ontario, and extends through the Kawartha Lakes and goes all the way to Port Severn. So actually all of the Kawartha Lakes are connected to both Lake Huron and Lake Ontario. That's probably one of the reasons there's so many different fish species that you can fish for. And also the other reason why the fishing is so good, it's moving water. So water actually goes from one lake to the other. And for those of you that like boating or trailering your boat to go fishing, you can actually trailer them to the different lakes or use the lock system that connects one lake to the other, and you can fish the entire series of lakes. Got a little one on.
I got a little one on.
Oh, you got one on too, doubleheader, all right.
Doubleheader.
The action is non-stop here. Weather's cold, hoodies up, gloves on. Okay, I'm taking the gloves off. You ever heard that expression? Okay, yeah, you got a smallie and largemouth. This is classic, you know, when you're fishing like this, late summer, look, same area, kind of the same presentation. You can get both species because they both feed in the same water. Not bad, eh?
Not bad.
First doubleheader.
First doubleheader of the day.
And they chuck those down. So because we're trying to duck out of the wind, I'll tell you what, the wind is dropping the air temperature. It feels like 0. That's why I had to put my gloves on. Because the Kawartha Lakes are only about 1.5 hours from the GTA, there's also thousands of people that enjoy the Kawartha Lakes as cottage owners. So one of the times that I like to fish the lake is when a lot of the cottagers are gone and a lot of the water enthusiasts. I don't mind people water skiing and, you know, using personal watercrafts or pulling tubes. It's kind of nice though when you can go out on any of the Kawartha lakes and you don't see anybody on the water. To do that, you have to fish late. The only challenge is that when you fish late in the season, the weather can be iffy, the water cold and the air cold. We call it cold water fishing, but you can catch some really nice fish. I got Mike, my guide. He's fishing and netting. That was quick, Mike. What if a fish grabs your line? Your rod's in the water. Good job. Good job. You got to admit, Mike, this is a challenge with this weather. So not too much.
Good.
Oh yeah, not too much damage. Nice smallie. Late summer smallmouth fishing in cold weather. Slow presentation. First good hit. You know what? You know, in the summer months, normally when I'm fishing for both largemouth and smallmouth bass, I tend to use a bait caster a lot because I'm casting to boat docks, I'm casting to targets, you know, like stumps that are in the water, lily pad clumps, and sometimes large weed beds. But when it comes to fall fishing in colder weather, I normally go with a spinning outfit for a couple of reasons. Number one, if you're throwing these soft plastics that are only 4 inches long with just a single worm hook in it, it's really light. So you want to be able to really cast it out, and a bait caster is not really designed to cast something that literally has no weight to it, especially if it's windy. So I find the spinning outfit works a lot better. If I'm using a flipping jig, then I'll use a bait caster because it's a little bit stiffer and I have heavier line on it. With both the spinning and the bait casting outfit, I like to use a Suffix 832 braid. Bait caster, 40-pound test, spinning outfit, 20-pound test. And if I'm fishing the Kawartha Lakes in the fall, in cold water conditions, because the water's clear, I always go with a fluorocarbon leader, and the standard is usually Suffix fluorocarbon in 20-pound test. The reason I use 20-pound test, I don't expect to get any 20-pound bass, but it's common to get 20 to 30-pound muskie on because they can cruise the same waters, only they're looking for bass. But if they see one of the soft plastics, in most cases, they hit it. So you better have a leader on if you're going to get one. Mike, what a go! Nice smallie. You said he regurgitated something?
Yeah, he's spitting up craws and stuff, so he's been feeding in there shallow.
Okay, I'm just going to get the net. You know, you got to remember, fish are cold-blooded, and their metabolism is controlled by the water temperature. So when that water temperature starts to drop, it goes into the 60s, 50s, even 40s, they move slower and slower. That's where you got to slow your presentation down.
That's right.
I love these bronze backs. Look at those models. You know, when they get excited, they get like tiger stripes, eh? They're beautiful. You know, I got to show you this rig because it's so effective, especially when you're dealing with clear water, cold water, where you want a slow presentation and a lot of dropping action. We call that a vertical presentation. So what Mike is using, he's using a 4-inch worm. Now you'll notice this worm doesn't have an action tail. So you can see the worm is almost identical at both ends. It's kind of fat, there's no action tail, and you can see there's a collar there. So what he's doing, he's using this little grommet, and I'm going to take it off the line here. I use sometimes a large split ring, okay? So that's it right there. See how tiny that is? Hopefully you can see it. I'm gonna put it on my finger right there. It's an O-ring. And what you do is you take your worm. Now the reason we're using this O-ring, if you were to hook the worm, you're gonna lose a lot of worms.
And they're not cheap.
No, they're not cheap, especially good quality worms. So I'm very carefully, you know, you don't use pliers or your fingernails because you can actually wreck the worm. But I'm gonna slide that O-ring up so it's about the middle. And what I find is if you put a little bit of tension on the worm, see how he actually gets thinner? It's easier to move that grommet up. So I want it about halfway. That's almost halfway, just off center. And then instead of hooking the worm, he's actually just putting the hook right there underneath the grommet. And that's the way it's rigged. Now you might say, well, how come you don't rig it at one end or the other like a Texas rig? The fact is you want it to drop slow. So if it was going to go head first, it'd go through the water quicker. But because it's horizontal, there's actually more water resistance. And as it's falling, it's not sitting still. It's constantly doing this as it's falling. And if you watch Mike, his presentation, every once in a while he's shaking his rod. And that's making this thing do this kind of thing. Go back and forth, back and forth. Now that water's cold. All I'm going to do is kind of pull the net up a little bit towards me. And there he goes. You know, it's not just that we're casting to shorelines, we're actually fishing very specific areas. And I've got my eye on the sonar, one eye over here, and then one eye back of the head in case Mike hooks a fish. So what we're doing, we're actually working what you would call the inside of the weed line. And this is a cold water bass tactic. You get both largemouth and smallmouth. The fish are doing one of two things. They're either coming off the shoreline from feeding very early in the morning or at night and heading back out to deeper water, or they're in the deeper water and they're not quite going up to the shoreline. They're just staying on that first weed break. It can be as shallow as 2 or 3 feet deep, as you can see on the sonar. Now, the interesting thing is, the best pattern is not just weeds where it meets the bottom. You try to find where there's a mix of weeds. So sometimes the weeds will be lumpy and laying on the bottom. Sometimes there's strands that are growing straight up. I find that some of the best fishing is where you get a combination of those. And I think it's because they produce more cover, especially the ones that go like that, vertically up and down. And a lot of times they're anywhere from about 2 to 8 feet deep. That's the inside of the weed line. So because it's pretty shallow and because we want a slow presentation, we're not using any weight on our rigs. We're just using a soft plastic 4 inches long and using either a larger hook like a 6-aught or a small hook like a number 4 on a worm. And we're actually fishing them very slow and shaking it.
Closed captioning of this program is brought to you by MD Marine Insurance. Boat insurance made easy.
Oftentimes, if we're fishing just a little bit deeper, where the rocks go out further from shore, it could be an isolated rock pile, or it could be a submerged rocky point that comes out into a weedy area. We'll also use flipping jigs that have living rubber on them, and either use a plastic trailer like a frog, or a piece of pork rind on it. And we try to fish those near the bottom, and we'll fish them slowly. We try to crawl them so they look like a crayfish. We find that the flipping jigs work well because they're weighted. They have a jig head on them, and you can fish them right along the bottom in the deeper water. You know, it's common when you're fishing in the fall, in these cold water conditions, to have large panfish come up. Sometimes you hook them, like large jumbo perch, or a big crappie, or rock bass. But most of the time, you just feel a pecking. I call it a machine gun, tat, 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 tat. Those are usually panfish.
Oh, I think I got a tap here.
Panfish? No, the bend in the rod, it's not.
Nice little smallie.
Small or largemouth?
Little smallmouth.
Not only have we found the area, the temperature's warm enough that I took my gloves off. That's a bonus.
That's a bonus on a day like today.
Yeah.
But the fish are still kind of active today, Italo. Just got to find the right little areas. They seem to be stacked up along this rock shoreline. The rocks tend to hold a little bit of heat. Nice little smallmouth, not a huge guy, but lots of fun.
One of the main food sources that late season smallmouth and largemouth bass look for is crayfish. So when you're fishing out from the shorelines, I make it a point to actually look for a rocky bottom or a mottled bottom, which means that there's some weeds but then some rocks. The rocks will usually look lighter in color. So the key is to find places off the shorelines where the weeds start growing but where it's rocky bottom.
Another little smallie on here. Fishing the wacky worm fairly shallow. They're fairly easy to catch on these wacky rigs. Pretty much anybody can use these kind of rigs, but you catch a couple of these with your kids, they get hooked on fishing. It's amazing. My kids are already hooked, 6 and 10 years old, and they just love coming out with Dad and catching these. They don't care if they're catching these small guys or the big ones. They just love catching them. They're a lot of fun.
You know, I really appreciate this, Mike, because I know a lot of guys that even if they fish bait, when they come out when the water gets cold like this, they fish the same spots that they do like in the summertime, and a lot of times they don't get fish. So even little guys like this to me are like a bonus, you know, especially when it's this cold. Now see what happened there? This is normal. My hook is down here, my tube is down here. That's because this tube is getting worn. I'm trying to get my money's worth. You know, when it doesn't stay on anymore, you got to put a new one on. So I'm just going to pull one out of the package, grab one here, put my big tackle box back down, and I'll just show you here again how to rig it. I'm putting it in with this big 6-aught hook. About the distance between there and there is about 1/4 to 1/2 inch. I'm pulling the hook through so that it's actually inside the grub. Now see how it's going to fit perfectly right there? So I'm going to just pierce it through gently, and you can see that the hook is actually going to take the shape of the grub right there. That's it. That's all you need. Done deal. You know, one thing that I'm excited about is working with the Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry in their Learn to Fish program. This is a fantastic program where they actually have a trailer and a truck, and they take it all over Ontario, and it's full of interactive activities to get kids into fishing. One is a sport fishing simulator, where it's a machine that actually simulates a fish fight while you're watching the fish on screen fighting. And the rod and the line do exactly what the fish does. So it's great for kids so that they feel how great it is when you actually hook a fish and fight it, especially a bigger one. The other thing they do besides the trailer and truck all over the province is they have these clinics at the different Ontario provincial parks. And at these clinics, they have personnel there that have the gear, life jackets, bait, rods, everything. And they actually help the kids that are staying in the park or that come down to the park fish. So it's a wonderful way to get kids into fishing. So I would encourage you, whether you're a dad, a granddad, or you just want to help some kids out, or you happen to be in a provincial park, make sure to check on the Learn to Fish program, because it's a great way to get our next generation hooked on fishing. Now you notice both Mike and I are using spinning outfits. We could be using bait casters, and we were earlier, but it's so windy that casting these light grubs with no weight, I'll net it for you in a second, is much easier when you're using a spinning outfit. But they are tougher spinning outfit, they're stiffer, which is important. Perfect.
I love catching smallmouth. They're such good fighters.
I know. Now you know what? Even with your small hook, look how well you hooked that guy. This is the perfect hook set. So there you go. Look at nice smallmouth. You know, we're getting these literally in the middle of the day. It's about 2 o'clock now, and the temperature warmed up a little bit, but it's only like 10 Celsius. Wind's still howling. You can see it up in the top of the trees. So the trees haven't totally changed color. We've seen some with really flame red, you know, leaves. But I mean, to the average guy, fishing's done. So you can see the shorelines are bare. We got no boats, no activity. Everything's packed in for the season. Yet it's just the beginning of October. But that's, you know, that's the way the average guy is, right?
My favorite time to fish is the fall. Hi everyone, I'm Mike Williams, Williams Outfitters. We're located in Curve Lake First Nation in the Kawartha Lakes region of Ontario. We catch all kinds of fish up here, walleye, bass, muskie, and panfish. We specialize in full and half-day guided fishing trips to take you and your loved ones out fishing. I have 2 kids. They just love the outdoors, and it's a great way to spend time with your kids and family. Here at Williams Outfitters, we not only offer fishing experiences, we also offer the full Kawartha Lakes experience, from shore lunches, canoe trips, pontoon boat tours, or just getting to know the area. So bring your family out, give us a call, and we'll hook you up.
We were just peppering the rocks because when it's cold like this in the fall, the rocks actually warm up. So the fish move into that shallow water to feed and look for those crayfish. This guy was just off it in about 4 or 5 feet of water. I'm not pretending, by the way. He's just holding it here.
I guess so. He's pulling us around.
See if he's a big slab, so I'm hoping he's okay here. Let's try to get him in the net.
Beautiful.
That's a good tournament fish, right?
That's a beautiful tournament fish. We come looking for him earlier in the year, and he wasn't here on it.
Look, yeah, he's got to be about 21 inches. That's a chunky smallmouth. What a go! You know, and you told me earlier that you let your clients, your guests, catch the biggest fish.
Yeah, we try to let the clients catch all the big fish here. So.
I thought you were kidding. I'm trying to keep my glove in the bow. You know what? That's a heavy fish.
Look at how chunky he is.
That fish, I'm guessing, is pushing like 5 pounds. It's got to be. I'm going to take a measurement. You know, I did taxidermy for so many years, Mike, that I got really good at guessing length and weight. Yeah. So I'm guessing this guy's over 21. I'll be very surprised if he's not over 21. And look at. Oh, okay. That's a handshake. That's not a net job. Okay, let's see if he won't fly out of my hands. You know what? He's 21 inches. Come on. That's a nice smallmouth. Mike, high five. This is what cold water fishing's all about.
What it's all about.
Hoodies, gloves, and everything. Fishing shallow. And you can get big fish just like this. What a goal. That was awesome.
Canadian Sport Fishing is brought to you by Rapala, premium fishing gear crafted from experience. Yamaha, conquer outdoors. Bait Cloud, bring the fish to you. Dickies, quality workwear since 1922.
This is the bait I like to use quite a bit. It's a natural color flipping bait, flipping jig, with a little craw trailer. I've dipped the ends here a little bit just to make it more realistic. I use this right through from spring to fall, and you can catch any kind of species of fish on it. I've caught bass, walleye, muskie, but it's a type of bait that you can fish anywhere. Rock cover, weed cover, docks, pads, so it's a very versatile bait. It takes a little bit to get used to, so you may want to practice maybe in your backyard or flipping at cans and stuff just to get the technique